guys, it's Lauren, and congratulations for making it to week 4 of the Owl In One knit along. So in this last week, we're going to be adding the finishing touches to the onesie, and you're almost done, so it's really exciting. So what we'll be doing this week is, first, we'll be adding bands onto the legs and also along this placket at the neckline and along the hood. And just a few notes about that. I actually ended up sewing snap tape onto the legs instead of using buttons because, you know, I think the buttons look cuter, but the snap tape's a little more practical for like a mom dressing her baby in this onesie. So the decision's up to you, but if you do want to sew on snap tape like I did, as you can see, you just want to omit the buttonholes when you are knitting the bands, but follow the instructions otherwise. And also just make sure when you're sewing on the band to the back of the onesie, it's actually going to be on the right side of the onesie because it's going to be folded over when you snap it to the front. And as for the placket here, I think this might not be stated in the instructions, but after you knit the bands, you're going to want to put the side with the buttonholes over the side where you're going to sew the buttons, and then you're going to want to seam that area right there, and you can just seam it all at once, the 2 layers of the bands with the place where you bind it off. So as for the face, we'll be knitting the facial features this week. I have a tutorial on how to knit the eyes using double pointed needles, and I also have a tutorial showing how to sew on the ears and the eyes, and so hopefully that will help you get a cute little owl face. Another thing to keep in mind is you're going to want to block all of your pieces separately. So after you've knit on the bands and knitted all your facial features, you're going to want to block all of those, whether you want to machine wash them or wet block them with a little bit of detergent. You want to lay them flat to dry before attaching all the facial features to your onesie. So again, this is what the back looks like, and it's all finished, so I hope you are happy with your onesie, and thanks for joining me. Bye! Alright, so in today's tutorial I'm going to be teaching you how to knit the eyes for the face for your onesie. Now, it is a little tricky to get started. We'll be using double pointed needles, but you know, once you get started it's going to be a little bit easier, so I'm going to guide you through the beginning steps. And you know, some people prefer to crochet circles, so if you know crochet and how to crochet circles, you're welcome to do that. You could even use like felt or fabric for the eyes. You don't have to knit them, but if you're like me and you like to knit everything, it's definitely a fun new skill to learn, and we'll be using this same skill for the bottom of the owl toy, so it's definitely good to learn. And so yeah, I'm just gonna walk you through. So the first instruction is just going to be to cast on 6 stitches. So you'll just want to cast on 6 stitches to one of your double pointed needles. Alright, so once you have these guys cast on, you're just going to want to divide them over 3 double pointed needles, 2 on each. So I'm just going to transfer 1, 2. And 1 and 2. And then we're going to want to join them to knit in the round. So we're just going to flip this over. Make sure we know where our working yarn is. Alright. Now please excuse my mismatched needles. I always lose my double pointed needles, so sometimes I have to buy another set and combine them. So we're going to put the tail to the back, a working yarn in front. Okay, so for the first round, we'll just be knitting. So the trickiest part here is just to make sure you don't lose your stitches with the double pointed needles falling off, so it just takes little comfort with knitting with these guys. All right, so we just finished our first round. And so for the next round, we're going to knit into the front and back of every stitch. So we're just going to knit into the front, into the back. And that is going to double the amount of stitches we have. So now we have 12 stitches, 4 stitches on each needle, and then this next round we're just going to knit. Now as you can see, once you get going, it's going to be a little bit easier. Once you have more stitches on each needle, it's going to feel more comfortable. And then once again, once we've knit that round, we're just going to again knit into the front and back of every stitch. And hopefully you've gotten the hang of this by now, and I will catch up with you when we are ready to bind off. All right, so we've just knit our last round and we're ready to bind off. And when you bind off, you just want to make sure that you have a firm tension. And if you're worried it's too tight, it's probably not. Just do it kind of tightly. Otherwise it will be ruffly. So just want to keep that in mind as you're binding off. So you're just going to do that all the way around. And then when I get to the end, I'm going to show you just a little trick for closing up the circle. So I'll catch up with you there. Alright, so I've just bound off to the very last stitch, and then, so one little trick to help you close the circle is you just want to stick your needle into the right side of the V of the first bound off stitch, which is right there, and just wrap your yarn around and then bind that stitch off. And yeah, you'll see that just helps close that gap right there. And then you just want to cut your yarn and just pull that through. And there you have it. And so when you weave in your ends to the back of the eye, it's going to look more finished. So here I would just recommend, you know, weaving this in and pulling that first stitch tightly so it closes up, and then just weaving this tail back into the back of your eye. So you want to do just enough, so maybe like an inch, so it won't come through, and then you can just trim that. And then as for the center, you know, there's not too much of a hole there, so it's not a big concern, but if you want to just make sure to close that gap, you just want to, you can thread a crochet hook through those 2 stitches there that we used to cast on, and just pull your tail through there, and that will just close that up. As you can see on the other side, there's no hole there now. And again, you just want to weave this into the back of the eye. You'll probably end up going like in a circle, and you know, once you have about an inch, you can just trim that off. Alright, so now we have our eye and all our tails are woven in. And so the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to do the little upside down smiley face, as I called it, on the eye to give it that cute little happy look of the eye, if that makes sense. And So that you're just gonna have to play with. You're gonna wanna use a tapestry needle and some yarn of your choosing. And then again, you're just gonna weave in all those ends to the back. And then the next step is you're gonna wanna block your eye. As it says in the pattern, you're gonna want to block the onesie and all of the features separately before you attach anything. That's my recommendation. And when you block the eye, it's going to be helpful to wet block it, and then you're just going to want to, pin it all around the eye so it lays in like a circle that you like, and then you'll see this is going to lay flatter and won't be as roughly after you block it. And then we'll be sewing the features onto the onesie, and I'll have another tutorial for you with tips on that. In this week's tutorial, I'm going to be giving you some tips on how to attach the facial features to your hood. So I've already attached my first ear. As you can see, you want to angle the top part of the ear about 1 inch from where your hood decreases were. So you can see that's about 1 inch. And then the bottom of your ear should measure about 3 inches from the edge of the hood. So we want to do our second ear just the same, and you left a cast on tail long enough to sew your ear onto the hood, so you're just going to want to thread that with a tapestry needle. And it's going to be probably a little bit easier if you start from up here, and so I just want to make sure that that measures about 1 inch from the center, so they're 2 inches apart. And then I want it to measure 3 inches from the bottom of the hood, so that's about right there. So I'm just going to have that in place. And then you just want to sew that down in place. So when you're attaching the ear, you just want to catch a couple stitches on the hood, and then make sure you go through both cast on edges of the ear. And you can just, do a basic whip stitch through the ear. Alright, so I've got that sewn on so I can see that looks good. They look pretty lined up, and because these ears have double thickness, they will stick up, which is quite cute. They look really nice. So after you've got that sewn on, you just want to bring this your tail through to the other side, and then you just want to weave in your ends here. So the next step for your face is going to be to place your eyes and nose on your onesie so you can sew them on. So this is going to be, your personal preference of what you think looks cute as an owl face. I like to have the eyes touching and just angled out just a little bit. And then I think it looks cute if the nose just like slightly overlaps the eyes and, comes down on the ribbing of the hood a little bit. And that looks like a sweet face to me. So it will be helpful if you pin down your eyes in place. We'll do the nose last since that's layered on top of the eyes. So to sew on the eyes and the nose, you're going to want to thread a sewing needle with thread that matches the color of your onesie, because we're actually not going to see the thread on the outside of the hood because we're going to be catching stitches behind the eyes and the nose, so it will be invisible. And you just want to have double ply thread with it knotted at the end so it's more sturdy. So to start, you'll want to start at the center of one of the eyes, and we're just going to bring our thread through and just catch one of the stitches on the back of the eye, and then bring that through to the inside of the hood. And so our thread doesn't come through the yarn. You just want to catch it, pull it through where the knot is so that is secure. And then you just want to sew the eye on around in a circle, and I would say catch a stitch about every 1/4 of an inch. You don't need to get every stitch on the back of the eye. If you do it about every 1/4 of an inch, that will be just fine. You just want to check every once in a while that, as you're sewing it down, it looks like it's being sewn in a circle. And so you just want to sew around this eye, and then you can continue using your thread and sew around the other eye. And then you can even, if you have enough thread left, you can go on from there to sew the nose on. All right, so I've just finished sewing on my features. And as you can see, you can't see any thread on the front, and then on the back, it's barely visible because it matches your yarn. So hopefully yours looks good, and if it makes you feel any better, I did have to do this a few times to get it right. So don't feel bad if you need to take out the thread and redo it, because I know I did. So I hope that was helpful.